I'm going to introduce our panel moderator, Linda Dunleavy, and she is going to then introduce the panelists. There are just a couple of prepared questions for the panelists. We're really looking for you to ask your questions and have this be a really healthy discussion. And without further delay, I'd like to introduce Linda Dunleavy, who is the Executive Director of the Franklin Regional Council of Governments, or the FRCOG. She's been with the FRCOG since 1993 and the Executive Director since 1999. And the FRCOG, for those who don't know, is a regional and municipal services organization and a regional planning agency that serves all 26 towns in Franklin County. The FRCOG is recognized for its leadership role in the Commonwealth as a skilled collaborative partner. Under Linda's leadership, the FRCOG has grown to 48 staff members in its 12 programs. That's probably like in the top 10 of Franklin County employers, right? Wow. And an estimated $6 million budget. Linda sits on a variety of boards and committees, including the Massachusetts Broadband Institute Board of Directors, the Franklin County Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and is still an elected member of the Hadley School Committee. And I think had some busy school committee stuff this week, so we're so glad she's here. She's super tired. So take it away, Linda.
Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to introduce each of the speakers and give you their impressive bio. I have 3 pre-prepared questions, and we're going to kind of go rapid fire down the line and get the answers to those 3 prepared questions. And then we're going to see how many more questions we can get from the audience in the same format. Do think of questions. My goddaughter says that I am unusually inquisitive, so I will come up with more questions. But really, we want to hear from you. So let me introduce our panel. We start with Danielle Letourneau. I read her bio, and I'm like, wow.
I know.
Super impressive.
No.
Danielle has been the executive director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Franklin County since 2013. Prior to that, she was employed for 12 years at the Center for Responsive Schools. Past community involvement. Wait for this. Past community involvement includes Big Brothers Big Sisters Board of Directors, Precinct 6 City Councilor in Greenfield, founding co-coordinator of the fundraising effort that successfully upgraded the play space at Beacon Playground, currently the Vice President of the Greenfield Business Association Board of Directors, Vice President of the Greenfield Democratic Town Committee, a member of the Greenfield Public Library Advisory Board, and she's a native of Montague. And we're out of time. That is Danielle. Roseanne Martoccia is the Executive Director of LifePath. LifePath is the formerly known as Franklin County Home Care, which serves Franklin County, North Quabbin, and has programs also operating in Hampshire, Hampden, and Berkshire counties. She has a master's degree in public administration from UConn. My husband would be displeased because of the UMass-UConn basketball rivalry. She serves on the Bay State Franklin Medical Center Community Benefits Advisory Board, the Community Action Board of Director, is a member of Mass Home Care, has recently joined the board of Community Health Center of Franklin County, and I have the pleasure of serving with her on Rural Development, Inc.'s Board of Directors. Next to Roseanne is Dan Kuhnhart of New York Life Agent with an office in Northampton. He's volunteered for the United Way of Franklin County for over 25 years. He is currently a board member, a campaigner, and chairs the compliance panel. He has served as the United Way's board chair and campaign president and lives in Greenfield. Brian Smith, 14 years of experience in the public sector, working in local government and higher education, sits on 2 boards, and is currently the town administrator of Irving, which was his goal. His life goal was to be a town administrator, and people, please understand that Brian is voluntarily reporting to a board that changes every single year based on a municipal election. And so that if Brian is heading left, his board can change overnight and he can be told to head right. It's yeoman's work. And with that, that is our impressive board members. Ready? Question 1. Talk about a challenge that you had in a nonprofit that you have either worked for or been on a board, and how, in your role, either as executive director or as a board member, you helped the organization through that tough time.
So I'm going first.
Yes, please.
Okay, because it's rapid fire, I have to change my answer from before because I'd be going on and on too long. One of the challenges I think that staff members see with communication with board members is when board members don't fully understand the day-to-day work, and of course they're volunteers, and like how would they? I just one example that was really interesting and is really great, and I'm going to encourage other board members to do it. I recently had a board member who volunteered. She works for a company that actually gives her time for volunteer work, which is probably one of the reasons why she's on our board, but not all of it. She came into the office and did some help. Some administrative help in the office. And while she was in our office, she got to witness what we refer to as a match meeting. So that was when the big and the little met for the very first time. And the work she was doing was helpful and important and helping us, move our paperwork forward, so to speak. But then seeing that helped her understand why it is that she does what she does on the board. So I would encourage you, if there's ever opportunities, to have board members come in and see the actual work as it's happening. We didn't even plan that.
That's brilliant. Roseanne.
Okay, so I'm going to use 2 examples. What's important? Support and guidance from a board, and that sounds so kind of broad, but in 2 examples, I was the president of a board when that organization was asked to sort of assume responsibility for another organization that had failed. And the board was instrumental in moving that forward, providing guidance, creating a governance structure that made sense, and really, from the financial to the personnel, just taking that on for a year or 2. And as director, our organization was asked to take on a program out of our area and went to our board and said, well, should we do this? And really talk through the essential things that we needed to have as the sort of the threshold before we said yes to our funding source. So there were pros and cons. So every day, those are just 2 real-life examples.
Roseanne, I'm glad on my bio I left off my master's in social work from UConn.
Another one.
Hey, we'll
What's
talk
up?
outside after, okay?
Okay.
Thinking about my long-term role on the United Way, as everyone knows, the United Way gathers lots of funds, hundreds of thousands every year, vets those, and then distribute those out to many of the partner agencies, 2 of which are right here. And I'm thinking about that, I'm in insurance and financial services, and we've always had a significant number of bankers and lately even accountants and a few lawyers on our board. And so those folks with that financial background, they've been very, very, very helpful on the board level, on the committee level, with our, the funding to the community, because they bring that financial acumen, and we really know how the fiduciary responsibility we have to gather the public's funds, your funds, and then distribute them where they'll have the biggest impact on our community. So I think, and that's another question is board makeup, but that's really something I've noticed over my years.
I would say, and I'll preface that one of the boards that I'm on the board of directors for would be Dial Self, and I think you all had a chance to hear from Star and Phil earlier today and realize how well they work as a team. The structure they provide to our board, I think is paramount to our success. There is such planful thought into how we organize the entire year. We have trainings that happen on a certain schedule. We have our strategic planning and our board retreats. Our individual meetings happen in a certain structure. So as we welcome new members into our board, we help bring that structure into how they operate. And it may be old information to existing members, but for those new members to hear that information again, or to hear that for the first time, it gives us a chance to have those conversations, and it keeps that cycle of learning happening. I think there's other boards that sometimes run from issue to issue whenever they meet, and it's really easy to get away from those basics, those foundational pieces. So the structure that they have put in place for us really has strengthened us as a board, and we just have a strong agency because of that.
That's brilliant. We should do that more. Second question. Why are you involved? What keeps you involved, both in your nonprofit board experience?
All right, it's going to sound super cliche, but it's people, and it's fun. No, I mean, really, if you think about your life in the great high school of life, right? You sign up for extracurriculars. So people volunteer to be on boards. Sometimes they do it, I guess, to further their career goals. But often the ones they pick are the ones they pick because it's something they're interested in and it's fun. I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say it was fun a little bit on the town council, and it's a little bit fun to be on the Greenfield Business Association. It is. I make friends on these boards with people that I may not otherwise be able to associate with in my nonprofit life. I don't always get to rub elbows with bankers and insurance people unless I'm being sued or I have to buy insurance. So it's really fun to meet people from different walks of life. And frankly, and I think you guys all know this too, it's not that jobs are easy to find, but all of us could be doing something else. But we're not, because we actually care about like the people we work with, the people we're serving in the nonprofit industry, or the folks we get to interact with. So it's super, I think it's mostly super fun. Are you gonna cry?
I am.
I think the nonprofit sector for me has always represented the real world. It feels like you have control over your organization, you have obligations to whoever gives you funding and so forth, but you can really be creative, collaborative, and innovative. So you have a set of things that you are perhaps funded to do, or it's in your mission, or driven by statute, but then you know where the problems and the gaps are, and that's the part you always want to be innovating. And I think people are drawn to boards because, and say yes, if it matches, if the mission of the organization matches their interests. And I like the fun factor.
A couple of years ago at a United Way board meeting, we actually asked ourselves this question, why are you involved? And I remember the answer that I wrote down at the time was, because someone asked me, roughly 25 years ago. I see a lot of nodding. And then I stuck around because I liked the organization, I liked the mission, I liked the impact of the community. I've done other boards. I was on the GCC Foundation board for a while, quite a few years ago, and more recently on the YMCA. And I've always come back to and kind of stuck with and said no to other requests for United Way, really because it helps out the entire community. It's apolitical, thank God, in this year especially. And many folks thought about that and the giving back and all of that. But someone asked, I liked the organization, I liked what it did, and that's why I stuck around.
Not to be repetitive, but I think the mission is usually where people first become involved with an organization. There's something about what you're trying to accomplish that is attractive, and so people at least step forward. But if they don't have the right relationships of the people invested, it's easy to become disconnected. Just yesterday I had a citizen who wants to come forward and serve on one of our boards that's working really hard on a redevelopment project. They're trying to take a former industrial site and turn it into a park. This has taken 10 years, and the passion can wane over the years, but being able to realize success is powerful. And so they're in a moment where they're experiencing a lot of success. And so it's bringing more citizens who are interested in this project. They're excited that they're getting this interest from the community as well. So it's really nice to be able to support that work and see them be successful for something they're so passionate about.
Government work can take a very long time. I had someone came in and toured the transit center, and they said, "This is pretty nice. How long did this take you?" And I'm like, 17 years. I'm going to throw you a new question. So you can think about this either as a board member of the many boards you sit on, or as the ED of your organization. Think about either your favorite board, the organization, or your favorite board member, and tell us why. What is the experience that this organization or this person you think of? It's awesome.
Favorite board member?
You don't have to
No.
name them. Don't name them. Just talk about why they're your favorite and what quality it is that makes them your favorite.
Well, no, I'll talk about the Big Brothers Big Sisters board because I was on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Franklin County before I worked here. And what happened was I was at my previous job and I was volunteering on the board, and it became fundraising season, and I was running around and I started looking at my work calendar at my job that paid me then. And it was getting in my way of working for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Franklin County, and I really felt that inside. So that was my favorite. I think it was, you know, the staff seemed great in the amount that I knew them, and the work was really important. And people were, you know, they responded to it because it's a nationally known name. I think it was a little bit easier to ask for stuff. So it became really fun. So when there was an opportunity to work there, I thought, gee, I'd like to work there. And so then I did.
Not to a specific person, but being on different boards, I think kind of a favorite quality in a board member that gets me, and is when there's oftentimes you're discussing an issue at a board, and kind of that discussion can go round and round, and some people are more long-winded than others, and then you know that the discussion is going to wrap up somehow, and that person who I call the voice of reason, or they drop that pearl of wisdom, and all of a sudden, like magic, it comes to a conclusion, the decision is made, and everybody's at peace. And that's great.
Yes.
My fellow board member is a man that I've actually served with on the other two boards, the foundation here and the Y. He's a community leader, a retired president of a wonderful local company that's been a major United Way campaign supporter. He's been recognized by our broader Western Mass community as a philanthropist of the year. And he came to the United Way after he retired and said, can I do a couple of little things? And then he's just taken over, and he's been instrumental in some of our recent transitions, just always being there, very humble, very quiet, and very knowledgeable. A great role model.
As I'm trying to think of the qualities of this person that I feel is an absolute asset to the board that they serve on, I'm thinking about qualities about being inclusive and solution-oriented, that forever optimist, not to be naive about how things are done and how they're accomplished, but this idea that projects can take 17 years. You need somebody who can hit those obstacles and still find that silver lining to work that entire board, that group through to stay focused on that goal. And so this person I'm thinking about has those qualities and then can rally the rest of the board to keep motivated and moving towards that goal.
Thank you for that impromptu question. Do you want to go back to the list now? Do you want to hear from the audience?
Sure.
Oh, hear from anybody? Penny.
I sit on a number of boards, and, you know, I guess it's true that busy people always get asked to be on something else. Do you ever feel like there's a segment of your population that truly doesn't have a voice in any of the work that you do? Because on the boards that I sit on, I notice the lack of, like, people of color, you know, the lack of young people. And so I wonder if that ever comes up during your meetings, that there are parts of the town or the county that we just really may not hear from, but we're still trying to do stuff in their best interest.
Yes.
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 I know on the United Way board, we're very happy that the Young Professionals Group has kicked off and has gotten pretty strong in this county. My office is in Northampton, and the Chamber sponsored Northampton area Young Professionals about 10 years ago, and that's organized and rolling. And a lot of what both organizations do, I believe, is get involved with nonprofits and look to join the board members, you know, join nonprofit boards. So as our United Way board ages, sometimes gracefully, sometimes not, we're looking at adding younger people to come in. And the other thing that we've struggled with or would like to do if we can we get someone who's been a beneficiary of one of the agencies, doesn't have a leadership role in the community, to join the board? And that's something I think that's come up recently as well.
I was going to say something similar to that. I think that at some point soon, we are all going to have to look at the way we structure boards of directors and when they meet and where they meet and if they need to meet in person, so that we can get participation from people who have not been able to join, people like younger people, single parents, people with low incomes, people of color. I feel like when even just the time to get to a board meeting at 5:30, those 9 to 5 jobs, it's assuming that everybody has those 9 to 5 jobs and has access to getting to the meeting, and we're missing out on a lot of voices there, and maybe the problem isn't trying to help that individual get to the meeting, but maybe thinking about the meeting differently. I know that even when I was on the town council, because I worked out of town, I felt at a disadvantage to the Greenfield lawyers that worked right next door to the town hall, because I felt like they were always hanging out in there and getting the inside scoop that I couldn't get. So.
In the health and human service sector, the workforce is dominated by women. And our board at LifePath has had the same challenge, that we typically have a majority of women on the board of directors, which is great. But when we get to the time of year when we're thinking about new board members, we have the discussion about we need to find a man. And so this year I'm happy to report that our newest board member who has been recruited is a man who lives in Greenfield. So.
I think this is one of the hardest issues for a board to address, and I know Dial Self has discussed this. I know many boards that I've been involved with. For most of my professional experience, I've worked in youth services or with at-risk families, and you're making decisions about programs and services and grant opportunities that you're going to pursue for people on their behalf, and they're not necessarily at the table helping you to make those decisions. And I know that boards and agencies spend a lot of time trying to work with constituents, surveying and other ways to take in that information, but it's not necessarily the same as having them sit at the table and help you make these decisions. So it's definitely imperfect, it's not balanced. I think every board needs to continue to strive for that, to make that meaningful, but there's challenges. And I also know that sometimes even running for a council seat or committee can be really intimidating to individuals who don't have that experience, that knowledge. They don't come from a family or a community that would normally participate. So there's a lot of obstacles that are even beyond what the board itself can control. There are societal issues that make that really challenging. I think we just have to keep striving for it.
Let me also add that I think we all recognize, those of us who have boards, that people's time is precious. And to try to recruit new board members is to compete against all of the other demands they have in their life. And so that finding a way to be compelling, to attract people to your board, is a constant challenge for us. And to get them to actually show up is another constant challenge. Lisa.
I have a question about burnout factor on boards. I've been on several boards. I participate in committees and boards because I genuinely feel like I have experience enough that I can contribute to the community or to the board. But my life, I work at the chamber, and before that I worked for a community development, cultural development organization, and my whole life, my work life is spent being on boards, Creative Economy Summit Board, Fostering the Arts boards. And then the mission of my organization is cultural development, or civic economic development. The people that I feel like that can contribute most to a board might be the most burnout. How do you deal with that? It's like the dentist or the shoemaker who doesn't fix his own shoes because by the end of the day you're so tired doing that thing at which you are the most skilled at and could contribute the most at. How do you deal with that?
For me, as a board member, I need to recognize when I'm going to burn out. And for instance, I'm in my 12th year on the Hadley School Committee, and I am burned out. It is important for me not to run again because I won't be an effective board member if I go another term.
That one's really hard for me because I have a really hard time saying no to things, and I do get asked to do things that I'm not doing. I have a really hard time saying no. My husband helps me decide sometimes. And because I do consider these things sort of the extracurriculars of my life and sort of part of my social circle too. And a lot of the stuff that I do does benefit the work I do. So yeah, I think recognizing and taking a break from a thing for a while. If you're on 3 things, maybe make that your max and try not to do 4 right now. And then I have learned that for the volunteer work that I do, I don't have to do all of the things in that volunteer piece. There are plenty of people that can come and do their one or two things, and I'm trying to be one of those so that I can do them well and not freak out and have to quit doing it.
That's a very thoughtful question, but I think for me it's respecting when others say no, even though you may want someone to join, or don't be disappointed because they're saying no for a good reason because they feel like they can't contribute, and also for myself to leave things when it still feels good. In other words, don't wait until you're burnt out. Make a transition when you're still feeling positive about being there and handing it off to someone else, or not joining another committee because you just can't do one more thing. And we all have, you do tend, people who volunteer are often on many things. So we're kind of all in that same boat, to be very cautious.
Danielle, you got to get better at saying no.
I know.
But it took me probably 15 of the 25 years or so to do that. And then the other thing, when you are involved with something, again, don't overcommit, don't take on more things,
Yeah.
but recruit other board members, find other people to join the committees, and delegate some of the collective work to them, and then we get to step back a little bit too. And then when we're in leadership roles, as easy as they may be, if you've been doing it a long time, and I'm going to be doing this in a Northampton Chamber committee that I've co-chaired, so I'm going to rotate off this winter just to let someone else on the committee have an opportunity to run the meetings and do things. So stepping aside, and I think you had said that too, but find other people to join in the endeavors and then pass the tasks on to them. It makes it easier.
I would say it's important to consider the structure of the organization. So if you are fortunate to be talking about an organization with a paid staff, there's an opportunity for the chair of the board to work with the staff to talk about the right preparations, the right steps that need to be put into place so that you're not burning out a volunteer board who may come in for night meetings or what have you, and this is one of many obligations. But if we're talking about a fully volunteer organization where there is no paid staff, I think it then comes the importance of the officers running that organization to set realistic goals, to not allow subcommittee work to become one person serving on all of those subcommittees, being really intentional about what your organization can truly accomplish, because it's very easy, again, to get caught up in that passion for the mission of that organization and then completely overburden yourself with responsibility, and then you're not having fun. It's not as much of the social piece, and the burnout is real. So just being very mindful of the structure of your organization and figuring out what you need to set for boundaries so that you don't burn out a board member. It's always important to have that self-reflection. I think that's really important, but I think the organization can help structure that as well.
I also don't check my work email on the weekends.
Exactly.
I don't do it.
Very good.
Set boundaries.
I think what's harder, and I don't have an answer to it, is when you report to a board and you see that your board members are burned out, and how you try to help them recognize that they are burned out. I don't really have an answer to that one. Anyone out there have one? Help me. No, sorry.
Give them permission to back off a little bit. Why don't you not chair that committee next year and let someone else do it? They're coming up.
Is also knowing when it's time for you to back off from an organization, because either you've done what you came to do, or I left an organization because the way the mission was going no longer was appropriate for me. Not that I had a problem with the way that it was going, but it was not in line with my values and what I wanted to do anymore. And I think the other thing that is really hard for everybody is to let your ego go out of it, because other people can do it after you're done. And that's the hardest thing. Like, I was the president. Oh my God, look at the way that person's doing it, and that's not the way they should be doing it. And like being like, okay, it doesn't have to be my way.
Yeah.
So sorry to answer it, but.
No, that's true.
No.
Like, everyone is replaceable.
Yes.
Yeah, and they should be. And if they're not, then you have to look at why that is. Figure that out.
Okay, and with that, we're going to end. You're all replaceable. Thank you for coming.
That's a very nice segue, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very
so
nice.
much.
Very nice.
Yeah.
We do want to be conscious of time, and let's again for our panelists there, they did a great job. Thank you.
That was
Taking a
funny.
picture of you guys.
And before I let you all go, I want to extend a sincere thank you to all of our presenters today. I've already heard some really amazing feedback about all of the sessions. Just a round of applause for our presenters who are still here. Thank you. And just to remember, the materials for the conference will be up on the website.